There was a night in the spring of 2019 when Marcus Allen sat in his parked car in the driveway of the home he had lived in for 14 years and could not make himself go inside. Not because anything terrible had happened that evening, not because anyone was waiting to fight him or punish him or deliver bad news. He simply could not stop the thoughts. They came the way they always came, fast and layered and relentless. 1,000 versions of every conversation he had ever had, every decision he had ever made, every moment where he wondered if he had said the wrong thing, chosen the wrong path, or missed something that everyone else could clearly see. He sat in that car for 2 hours. His dinner went cold on the stove. His wife Rachel texted him 3 times. And Marcus just sat there, trapped inside his own mind, unable to move, not unable to quiet the noise, unable to explain to anyone, including himself, what was actually happening to him. What you are about to hear is not just Marcus's story. It is the hidden truth about millions of people across America who appear completely fine on the outside while carrying something exhausting and invisible on the inside. People who replay conversations at 3 in the morning that happened 3 years ago. People who make a simple decision and then spend the next week dismantling it from every possible angle. People who love deeply, work hard, and want nothing more than peace, but whose minds will simply not stop running. Before we go any further, let us know in the comments where you are watching from. We would love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Psychologists have a clinical term for what Marcus was experiencing. It is called rumination, and research published in the journal World Psychiatry describes it as one of the most destructive mental habits a human being can develop, not because it feels dramatic, but because it feels like thinking. It masquerades as problem-solving. It convinces you that if you just turn the thought over one more time, examine it from one more angle, run through one more scenario, you will finally find the answer that makes everything okay. But the answer never comes. Because rumination is not thinking. It is thinking about thinking, in an endless loop that leads nowhere except deeper into itself. And by the time Marcus understood that, it had already cost him more than he ever imagined he could lose. It had started small, the way these things always do. A critical word from his manager at the accounting firm where he worked in Cincinnati. A moment at a dinner party where he wondered if something he said had landed wrong. A look on Rachel's face one evening that he could not quite read and could not stop thinking about. Individually, none of these things were significant. But Marcus's mind did not treat them as small. His mind treated every one of them as evidence. Evidence that something was wrong, that he was failing somewhere, that the life he had built was more fragile than it appeared. And so he thought about them. And then he thought about them again. And then, at 2 in the morning, staring at the ceiling while Rachel slept beside him, he thought about them one more time just to be sure. And neuroscientists who study the overthinking brain have found that this kind of chronic rumination is associated with heightened and prolonged activity in the brain's threat detection system. The mind locks onto a perceived problem the same way an alarm system locks onto movement in the dark. It does not matter whether the threat is real. The brain does not distinguish between a genuine danger and a worst-case scenario that exists only in your own imagination. It responds to both with the same flood of cortisol, the same racing pulse, the same inability to rest. And the longer a person stays in that state, the more the nervous system begins to treat anxiety as its default setting. Marcus was not choosing to overthink. His brain had simply been conditioned, through years of small worries reinforced by more small worries, to run on high alert at all times, even when nothing was wrong. Especially when nothing was wrong. By 2021, the cost of that high alert had become impossible to ignore. At work, Marcus had begun missing deadlines, not because he was lazy, but because every task triggered a cascade of second-guessing that made starting feel impossible. Should he approach the report this way or that way? Was the email he sent this morning too direct? Had he offended his colleague in Tuesday's meeting? Each question opened 10 more questions, and each of those opened 10 more, until the original task was buried somewhere beneath an avalanche of maybes and what-ifs that he could not dig his way out of. Research published in 2024 found that overthinking leads to measurably poor decision-making in professional settings, with adults between 45 and 55 among the most commonly affected groups. Marcus was 47 years old, and for the first time in his career, he was being quietly considered for a performance review that had nothing to do with his talent and everything to do with a paralysis that nobody around him could see or name. At home, things had quietly grown worse in a way that is particular to overthinking, which is that it destroys the present by keeping you permanently somewhere else. Rachel had noticed it first in the small things. The way Marcus would go quiet at the dinner table, not from sadness exactly, but from an absence, as though part of him had left the room without his body following. The way he would ask her the same question twice in one evening because he had not truly heard her answer the first time, his mind already somewhere down a different corridor. The way a simple plan to visit friends for the weekend could become, by Thursday night, a source of genuine dread for him. Not because he did not want to go, but because his mind had already rehearsed every possible version of the evening, including every version where something went wrong. Overthinking does not just affect the person living inside it. It quietly reshapes every relationship around them, creating a distance that nobody planned and nobody knows how to close. The night Rachel finally said something was a Wednesday in March of 2021. She did not say it angrily. She said it the way people say things they have been holding for a very long time and can no longer carry alone. She said, "Marcus, I feel like I am losing you to something I cannot see, and I do not know how to compete with whatever is happening inside your head." He did not have an answer for her, because the truth was, he had been losing himself to it too. He just had not said it out loud yet, because saying it out loud meant admitting that something was wrong, and admitting something was wrong meant his mind had one more thing to examine, one more thing to turn over and analyze and worry about in the dark. This is the trap that overthinking builds around itself. It even turns the awareness of overthinking into something to overthink. What finally reached Marcus was not a book or a podcast or a wellness routine, though those things came later. What reached him first was a single sentence from a therapist he almost did not go see, who looked at him after 40 minutes of listening and said, "You are not solving problems, and you are rehearsing suffering." And something in those 5 words broke through in a way that nothing else had. Because Marcus had genuinely believed, for years, that the thinking was protecting him, that if he analyzed enough scenarios he could prevent bad outcomes, that the vigilance was the point. He had never once considered that the vigilance itself was the wound. Psychologists call this the illusion of control through rumination, and research shows it is one of the most persistent myths that overthinkers carry, that more thinking equals more safety, when in reality, chronic rumination increases anxiety, deepens depression, and makes a person significantly less capable of responding effectively to the actual challenges in front of them. Marcus is doing better now. Not perfectly. Not in the clean, resolved way that stories sometimes promise. But better in the way that real recovery actually looks, which is quieter and slower and more honest than anything he expected. He still catches himself sometimes, still feels the pull of the loop, still notices the moment when a thought that should pass in 30 seconds starts gathering weight and circling back. But now he recognizes it. And recognition, as his therapist told him, is the beginning of the only kind of control that actually works. Not the control of thinking your way out of every bad outcome, but the control of choosing, one moment at a time, not to follow the thought all the way down. If you recognized yourself anywhere in Marcus's story, you are not broken. You are not weak. You are someone whose mind learned, somewhere along the way, to treat uncertainty as danger. And that is not a character flaw. It is a pattern. And patterns can change. Now we want to hear from you. Do you see yourself in Marcus? Has overthinking ever cost you something you cannot get back? Or are you still in the middle of it right now? Drop your story in the comments below. Your words might be exactly what someone watching right now needs to read today. Share this video with someone whose mind never seems to stop, because somewhere right now there is a person sitting in a parked car in their own driveway, trapped inside their own thoughts, and they need to know they are not alone. Subscribe to this channel, because the mind is always worth understanding. And we will see you in the next one.